the next step we're going to take is we're going to start building up the triangular ridges. As we can see, there's our first contact. And we'll just take out some of the wax from there so we can make some room for the secondary ridges eventually. So the Mesio-Lingual triangular ridge, we're going to start it around the central pit, and then work our way up to the cusp tip. So let's close it and see. If you see the Disto Buccal triangular ridge is not even close yet, so we're going to have to add to that one. The lingual triangular ridge, we got quite a heavy contact, so we're going to have to take some of that away. We also have the other two parts of the tripod from our previous exercise when we were building the cusp, so One was here, one was here, and now we have the third one here. This one we'll have to take away a little bit of the wax, and then we'll smooth it out again. And let's take away some of this area here to make room for the central groove. So we'll heat this up a little bit. I think we added maybe a little bit too much still. Yeah, it's still a bit too heavy. So let's take away a little more. And let's heat it up again. Okay, that's a little bit more acceptable now. But let's do it one more time. Make sure we clean the wax off the heating tip. And let's heat it up a little bit more. Every time we heat it up, we're going to take a slight amount of wax off with the hot spatula, because the hot spatula actually draws the wax away from it. So here we are. I think this is good enough. I'll just take away the flakes a little bit, and then we have 1, 2, and we need one more contact right on the Disto Buccal triangular ridge, so we're going to build that up. So remember, the portion of the triangular ridge that's close to the central groove is going to be wider. And as we can hear the little click from the stone, we're going to add a little more. Just take it little by little. Let's have some patience. Make it in the shape of a teardrop. And we just wait for it to solidify a little, and then we'll see. Okay, we still need to add more. Let's double check, see how close we are here. Looks like we're almost there. Uh-oh, I'm a bit too close, so I'll take away some of this wax. And then we smooth it out, add a little bit more, but let's not get that close anymore. Wait for it to cool a little. little bit more. Not there yet. Okay, we have contact, although it's a little large, but we have it right there. So let's take some of this away, just around the contact. So we leave just that area right there. Okay, so the next one is going to be, right here. That's just going to be a very tiny little triangular ridge right on the Disto-Lingual. Which is not much. I don't have to worry about contact with that one since it's so small. We do have contact on this area right there, but we're not gonna be able to do it in there. So the next thing is we're going to do the secondary grooves. I'll do that with the blue wax. Actually, I just work on the triangular ridges with this one. So we're gonna do the triangular ridges on the premolars. Starting in the central groove area. And we bring the teardrop right up to the cusp tip. Make sure we don't heat it up too much. Widen it out a little on the central groove area. And let's see if it's enough. Or is it too much? We'll find out. Oh, it's just right. The very slight dot right there. So let's, yeah, it's a very slight dot, so we do have contact. We're not going to build it out more than that. So now we're gonna move on to the Buccal triangular groove of the first premolar. I'm gonna do the same thing. Wide on the bottom. Now this is a little too wide. So let's take it away. We'll start again. Remember, you're better off just starting over if it's a little off. Let's do it again. The wax doesn't drop right away. You can kind of start it from the cusp tip, but we still have to widen it out on the bottom. So there we are. Let's try it. We got a very slight contact, so let's just add a tad more. Okay, that's perfect right there. Let's see how close. Okay, right there. That's the perfect contact. Let's add a little bit more to the second premolar, see if we can get the same. Oh, perfect. Another one just like it, you see? Let's check it out. Those are the perfect little contacts right there. To the lingual triangular ridges now on the premolars. So let's see. So we're gonna go a little bit more in the mesial portion. Try your best not to blend the two triangular ridges together, but I know it's tough, so we may have to just separate them. Okay. We have the first one right here. And let's see, do we have one on the second? Yeah, the second one is right there. So now we can kind of separate these ridges. And separate these ridges. I know these are very difficult to get by just waxing. What we can do is we can just smooth them out with a little more heat. But just take the wax off the waxing spatula, so we can take a little bit more out. And then it will round it so it looks like I actually waxed it like that. So let's close it again. And I can see that I still have a heavier contact in this spot here and a lighter one here. So we'll leave this and we're going to take a little bit more off of the first premolar. So I'm going to leave this just like that. So now we can see the contacts. So we have them here, 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 and then we have it here. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then 4. There's a balancing contact right there. So this is the functional cusps, and another balancing contact on this one. Then we have a tripod here, and then we have a tripod here, and we have the mesial and the distal contacts from the premolars right on the marginal ridges. So this cusp to marginal ridge on the lower, and according to the upper, it's the upper marginal ridges that the lower contacts. So that is the upper triangular ridges right there. So the next thing we're gonna do is the secondary ridges. So we're going to do them in blue. But before we do the secondary ridges, what we're going to do is we're going to thicken up the oblique ridge a little bit. So that in its essence is going to be a secondary ridge right there. Although it's a primary, because we're actually going to probably get some contact. I think we did get contact before, but we're gonna get a little bit heavier contact. So we're gonna carefully heat it up and move to the central groove area. Let it cool down a little and see if we got contact. And we do. Quite a heavy one at that. So just take it down a little bit and then smooth it out with just a hot spatula. still have contact. And we do. And this contact is pretty good, small enough. Let's take off the little flakes. So this is what we're gonna wanna end up with. So as we start the secondary ridges. So I like to start with this one. We have the most room in that area. So we're gonna do it right, nice and easy. Don't overheat that wax. So with this one, we're not gonna get a contact because it's kind of far away. And once we put that there, we can puddle it in a little bit right here. So that creates a little bit of a fanned out groove. So it's going to be sharp in the middle and then it fans out towards the cusp tip. Now on the mesial portion of the Disto-Lingual cusp, I'm going to just drop a little wax right here. There's not enough room for a secondary ridge really. So it's just going to be like a little depression right next to the buccal groove. So let's do the distal portion of the mesial cusp like that. So we kind of filled it in. It's gonna be a little concavity right here, and after that we can actually define the buccal groove with our instrument carefully. Don't have to go too deep, just define it. So if you want to see it closer, it's just like that. So now we're gonna do the mesial secondary groove on the mesial buccal cusp. This one will have to be very careful also. So this will also be just kind of like a depression, and eventually we're gonna make a triangular groove right in that area. There's really no room for the secondary grooves, so this will be a triangular groove, the disto buccal triangular groove of the disto buccal cusp. This will be the mesial triangular groove of the mesio-buccal cusp right here. Then we're gonna move on to the secondary ridge of the buccal cusp of the second maxillary premolar. So Just a little one right there, and we're gonna make a little one on the other side. Now on this we don't have to worry much about contacts because they're secondary grooves. So once we've done that, then we're gonna puddle it in right towards the tip of the cusps, like that. Again, let's look at it up close. Now we're going to define the grooves a little bit, the distal and the mesial triangular grooves. Actually, these are not the triangular grooves, these are the secondary grooves right here. The triangular grooves would be more closer to the outside, right here. So now we move on to the secondary grooves of the first premolar, the secondary ridges of the first premolar. Now we're gonna puddle in those same areas, but here we don't add any more wax because we can just melt the existing wax into it, just like that, and just create a little bit of heat and just very quickly just go over it. Then we're gonna take these, gonna define a secondary groove right here. And this is going to be the triangular groove right there. Now we'll see if we have enough room later on for the triangular grooves, because if we don't, and if we have to actually get rid of the triangular grooves, then the secondary groove becomes the triangular groove. So let's see what we can do here. Looks like we're just gonna puddle that in a little bit and puddle this in a little bit. There's really no room for secondary anatomy here. And the same with this one. Second premolar, on the lingual we'll just puddle it in, but only up to the central groove, because these areas here will become the Mesio-Lingual Mesio-Lingual and a Disto-Lingual triangular groove. And then, as we can see, it's possible maybe to put in a secondary groove here, but I think that it would be way too convoluted. So what we'll do is we're going to puddle this in a little bit. Let's focus on it a little more. Okay. So that will just kind of heat it up a little. And see if we can make a triangular groove a little bit right there. It's kind of like a triangular groove, and then you'd have this part would be the secondary groove and this part would be the triangular groove. And then the next groove we're gonna put in is the marginal grooves right here and right there. Now please remember the names of these grooves, because there will be a quiz on it. We'll do the same. The second premolar. Let's see if we can put a secondary groove there. Maybe one here. Then we can puddle this in right there. And here. So those are puddled in. Is here on the first premolar. Kind of puddle those in. And we're gonna make the triangular grooves right there. So on the first premolar, we're gonna make a triangular groove right there, and then the secondary groove right there. Then we make the Mesial and the distal marginal grooves. And we do the same thing with this tooth right here and this tooth right here. Now we move on to the molar. So on the distal of the Mesio-Lingual cusp, we're just going to puddle this in right there. Since we made the oblique ridge a little bit thicker, there's no more room. So next we'll do the secondary ridge on the mesial portion. Right here. And then we puddle that in on the portion. Then we make the secondary groove right there and your triangular groove right here. So then the next thing we're gonna do is make the marginal groove. And then the distal marginal groove. So let's see, make sure that it's still good stone to stone contact, which we do. And here's our second thing. So the next one we'll have to do the Disto-Lingual cusp right there, which is gonna be just puddling in basically. So what we'll do is take some blue wax and we're gonna puddle it in right here, and we're gonna puddle it in right there. And close it down, make sure we still have contact. And we have contact right here on the cusp tip, and we'll be satisfied with that. Then we shall just kind of make everything nice. So we have little areas here that need to be filled in. So with this we're going to use a very sharp tip instrument for a waxer. So we can take a tip like this and make it even thinner if we want to, and that way we can get right in there. Like this, it's gonna be a little tricky to get in there because they are so close together. So what we're going to do, let me turn on my extra light here. This way we can see what we're doing a little more. I finished charging, so let's see. I'm going to go down here. Just make sure you put very little heat on this because it will melt everything together. If you come together a little too close with it, then we'll just have to separate them with the instrument. But let's try to be as separate as possible. So whenever you're adding, make sure you're adding with the same color wax, so that we're not gonna mess up our little definitions here. This little white area, I'm just going to cover that with green wax. Ooh, I heated that up a little too much. So let's fix it. So I'm just gonna carve that down a little bit and re-add the oblique groove. So we had to take away from here and re-add the oblique groove right here. And now we're gonna add a little bit more green wax on top of the white to make this look right. Just do not heat it up too much, just enough so we can place it and not let it run everywhere. Let's close it again. Make sure we still have the contact, which we do. It's right here. And we have a little bit more of a areas that are still not filled up, which we have to kind of fill in right there, that hole. Have to be super careful with that. So on that hole, I think I'm going to step right there. It's actually not a hole. It's kind of like a reflection there. Right here. Let's just kind of... actually it is a hole. Let's go in there with a little bit of green wax. Make that oblique ridge maybe a little thicker in that spot. But we have to be super careful. See? There. Now we're gonna have to add right here. And that one we're gonna use some red wax, because it looks like the Mesio-Lingual triangular ridge is a little bit deficient in that spot. So we're gonna be very careful and add just the right amount of heat. Then we're gonna fill it in and take the wax off. At this point, since we already have contact there, we don't want to add more contact, so we're just going to nicely kind of smooth it out. And I'm going to puddle this area in a little bit more so that it's going to look nicer. Then blend this in to the cusp ridge right there. And we're gonna go in and we're going to puddle this in a little bit more right in this spot here. Let's see. And then we're able to successfully close that area. So now we're going to redefine the marginal groove and then go into the central groove. So it's going to kind of zigzag over the tooth like this. You don't want it to go straight because that doesn't look natural. So we want to kind of build these ridges so that they're kind of uneven and they don't go geometrically across the teeth. This way it's like kind of random as the groove goes across. And it's going to be the same with the premolars. The premolars look like we can probably put and continue the secondary ridge right here on the second premolar and close up that gap. So again, you have to be super careful with the heat. And we can kind of close it from both sides. And then we can just take our instrument and open it up a little bit. Make your groove. The Disto marginal groove right there runs into it. And we have the triangular ridge, and then the secondary ridge right there. And over here it looks like we got some contact, which is a good thing. And we can look into it, and I don't think anything else is open on it. So we move up to the first premolar. So again, we have a little bit of an opening on the distal pit, so we're going to close that up by just heating up the secondary ridge and just kind of teasing it down. And we'll do that with the distal pit area, but that side we just puddled it in because over here we just puddled it in because there's really not a lot of room there. So that's closed, and now we're just going to refine the groove. So the marginal groove will run right into the distal pit, and then the triangular groove will also run into the distal pit, and the division between the buccal and lingual triangular ridges also will run into the distal pit and then the mesial pit. And on the mesial part, you will have the mesial marginal groove right here running into the buccal and the lingual triangular groove. And obviously that will form the mesial fossa, which ends in the mesial pit. And that is our final product. And again, this is the left side, and it is the cusp to marginal ridge occlusion. So let's look at it up close a little bit better. And again, and listen to it. It's completely down. That's what we should hear. And this is what it looks like. This articulator is a tiny bit off, so there are